Hello, I'm Fatema Ahmed and I'm delighted to be talking to Justin Coombes in his exhibition in Indras Net at his gallery HOXTON 253 in London. Justin, can you first of all tell me about the title and about the story that informs the works in this exhibition?
Yes, so the title is drawn from Buddhist and Hindu mythology. Indra is a god, the god of heaven, in various Hindu and Buddhist belief systems. And the net which he casts is used as a metaphor for interdependence of all living and unliving forms. I make reference to it both directly and indirectly. So in some of these pictures you'll actually see a physical net which the scientists in my fiction use in order to catch fish. But the senior scientist also makes reference to it as a metaphor. And basically, we don't see this literally in my project, but to know the source of it, I should explain that the net is conceived as this vast thing of covering the world, and at each point where netting crosses over, there's a kind of jewel or raindrop hanging, and within that jewel we can see all other points of existence. So I just found it a really lovely and helpful metaphor for this project, where I specifically wanted to talk about interdependence within nature. It's a really important Buddhist theme, and then specifically, I suppose, the idea of humanity relearning its place and taking a less extractive relationship towards the rest of nature.
So that's the metaphor. Can you tell us a bit about the situation of these two scientists and where they are and when they are?
Yes, they are working together on a kind of unspecified project just over 1,000 years in the future, in 3222. And they are travelling upstream the Falgu river in northern India. The upstream is significant because, again, this is a kind of metaphor that you'll hear in various forms of Buddhist practice about, as it, in a sense, going against the flow of life the regular flow of life in order to kind of discover its real mysteries. So they're travelling together upstream, and the significance of that particular river is it's basically at the city or ancient city Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha is supposed to have achieved enlightenment, sits on that river. So they are operating where he had that revelation. And as they travel, they discuss the relationship between science and morality and the soul, and enlightenment itself. I don't think that word is actually used. They also, I just wanted to mention that the significance of those dates. There are lots of kind of visual puns, lots of eyes looking towards you in the pictures, and 3222, as well as being approximately 1,000 years in the future, also refers to two f-stops on a camera lens. f32 is a very fairly wide depth of field, and so is I can't remember what I just said, f32 is, and so is f22. So there were originally, earlier on in the project, there were lots of kind of visual puns about that as well, and the idea of stopping down and looking through a camera lens. But as with several other things, that kind of got washed away as the project progressed.
Since you've mentioned pictures and we are literally sitting in front of them, can you talk about what is in the show and particularly, first of all, the drawings?
Of course, yeah. So the drawings, we're sitting in front of a sort of mini collection of 5 out of a total of 22 or 23, I think. And in these specifically focus on the 2 scientists that I just mentioned, also their machine. They have a machine which they call a wisdom scanner, which can see the souls of the various animals and insects which they're studying. And they also operate within this small canoe. So that's what we're sitting in front of here, some panels that describe that. And in the rest of the show, our scientists crop up again, but there's more of a focus on the things which they are studying rather than the scientists themselves. And I guess there's a particular interest I've got in my drawings in quite small details and in contrasting textures. I particularly enjoy drawing the texture of the crocodile's skin, the clear water in front of the zebra deer.
One thing I noticed, I really enjoyed sort of looking at the drawings, is they have a wonderful sense of movement. You're sort of capturing details. Is that something you're sort of deliberately trying to bring into them? The sort of movement of the line and the way you create light? Yes,
definitely. This drawing here was the very first one I made in the series. I didn't really know what the project was going to be about when I made that, but it was just a kind of image that emerged in a quite surrealistic way out of my subconscious. And then shortly afterwards I made this one as well. And you can see the lines of the flowing river in that became a really kind of key trope, I suppose, in the whole thing, because I think one of the things that I was trying to communicate was a sense of flux, which is another really important idea, I suppose, within Buddhism, that everything is actually changing all the time. Even these floors, these chairs, they might seem fixed objects, but of course, on the atomic level, that's not strictly speaking true. So it became both an interest, as with the net, I suppose, as a sort of literal interest in showing flowing water in a lot of the pictures, but I'm also interested in the kind of wider associations we could draw out of that. And I guess my own anxiety as a person and an artist get channeled quite nicely into the drawing. So I made these quickly and with a lot of movement, which is one reason why they're quite finely detailed.
Can you talk about the palette of this? So this sort of sepia sort of tone that they have?
Yes, so the original drawings are in black and white. They're sort of silvery graphite, which is a standard pencil on cartridge paper. But what I've done is scanned each drawing and then applied a simple Photoshop filter to give them this slightly pinkish / sepia kind of tone. And I like that for several reasons. One, it brings up the highlights in the images better, so they have an almost kind of pastel-like feel. They have a slightly greater depth, I think, than the original drawings, which I really like. And this sepia tone also contrasts nicely with the blue of the wisdom scans. And within photography, these are 2 really kind of key important colours. One is a warming filter, the other is a cooling filter. So I think within the film itself, we see most of the action in that warmer sepia tone, and then we cut to the cool blues of the wisdom scans when we're looking at the results of their work. And I just, as well as it being an obvious way to announce which register we're looking in, I personally just like the contrast. I find it quite pleasing to look at.
You've mentioned the film. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about the story, the narrative. You've always been interested in the relationship between words and images. So you've written the script that we can hear the 2 scientists talking to each other in poetry and rhymed couplets.
That's right, yes. So I've been working with poetry for a long time, and both keeping it separate to my visual work and combining it. And the significance partly of the poetry, I suppose, is that I like the idea of rhyme making, specifically rhyme, but other kind of melodic qualities of poetry, having a kind of internal sense, in the same way that, you know, when we have a stream of consciousness and we're not necessarily saying things out loud, there often can seem a harmony or a symmetry or a logic to the way we think, which isn't necessarily captured very well by everyday speech and prose. So I like also the slight formality of the rhyming structure and the regular rhythm. Seems somehow also to match the idea of a journey and of going upstream and there being kind of regularity to it. I liked both of those things. I've forgotten the first part of your question, sorry.
I think it was the conversation that the scientists have, what they're saying to
Yes, yeah. I think it's important to sort of stress that it's not a regular narrative, really. The story, if there is any such thing, is simply that they are travelling together and they're on a research project. And we can see, although this isn't announced in the film itself, but it's maybe something we could infer, that their machine scans things and appears to show something else within the creatures that is not evident on the surface. But other than that, the film is more of a kind of moving dialogue than it is a story as such. And as I said, they discuss these quite heavy subjects, especially the purpose really of what they're doing.
You said that when you made the first drawing, you didn't know what the project was or quite where it was going. How did it develop? How did you get from one drawing to 23, and how much of the sort of mythology or the thoughts about ecology came along as you went? I
think those things came at different speeds, but prior to this I made a project called Reversed Curses, which is set in contemporary India rather than in India of the future, and that was about a Hindu man losing his faith. To some degree it paralleled some of my own experiences with frustratedly seeking a form of religious faith myself, but failing to find one. And then I realised there was a sort of congruence between that and my growing interest in Buddhism, which is younger than Hinduism, but shares a lot of qualities with it. Essentially, the Buddha was born a Hindu and founded Buddhism himself, so Buddhism comes out of Hinduism. So I knew that I wanted to make a project. Having made one that explored Hinduism, I knew I wanted to make one that touched on Buddhism, and then Buddhism seemed to become more and more significant the longer I thought about these things. Another key kind of genesis of the project was actually some despair on my part, which was catastrophizing about the environmental crisis and maybe reading about it and interacting with it in quite a superficial way in some respects, specifically reading headlines, and there are some extremely worrying headlines, but not going further into the science behind it. So there's a sense in which, in a way, I was forcing myself to think more positively about climate change and the future of the Earth specifically, even if it wasn't actually based on any hard science. It was just a kind of mental exercise for me to want to almost like reboot my relationship with nature and think about it in a joyous way in which I first encountered it as a small child.
Would you can talk a bit about the actual process of drawing itself, because I think I certainly have associated you with photographic work, with quite sort of inventive uses of photography and kind of lens-based work. I think you said that you didn't show your drawings for a very long time. So,
yeah.
Were you drawing all the time in between, or did you come back to drawing?
I drew a lot as a child, and I stopped drawing really in maybe my early 20s. So I'm 44 now. It's maybe over 20 years really that I wasn't seriously drawing, but it took a kind of informal place in what I did as an artist for a very long time. And I always made little sketches and notes and doodles in preparation for my photographic work. And in a sense, I would say the photography is a form of drawing. And, you know, of course, if you think of the etymology of the word, it's drawing with light. And I don't think I would have made the kind of photographs I have made so far if I didn't have that earlier training and grounding within drawing. So it's maybe not such a clear distinction anyway.
I think I would want to say that there's nothing despairing about actually looking at the drawings, and you can't see the ones that I'm thinking of behind us. But there's such close attention to detail, and there's sort of lovely botanical, but also sort of storybook quality to them.
Yeah. Yes. Well, certainly, like I would say, it hasn't been a neat line for me from that point of despair to now I suddenly feel completely enlightened and happy about everything. It's a journey, you know, but and it's paralleled by my own secular Buddhist practice. But certainly, almost every drawing in this exhibition, I have happy memories of making each one, even if maybe I wasn't too happy in the wider scheme of things at the time. There's an absorption in the process of drawing. There's a meditative quality to doing it, which allows you to get really kind of very pleasurably lost. So I certainly will be doing a lot more drawing in the future, I think.
Well, I think on that note, Justin, thank you so much for being so interested about your exhibition.
Thank you very much, Fatema. It's a real pleasure.